you know, it's the Greens being a way out of sync on this one.
Yeah. Right. Well, staying with Allan Crafer, he features pretty regularly on the Country 99 TV website. No change this week. He's been in court protesting the fines which he hasn't paid for breaches of resource consents. Allan, really, what's to be gained? The money is hardly likely to be paid. Why is there any point in trying to get these convictions reversed?
I think that Crafer is subject to the law of the land like any other farmer and any other individual, and he really should stop throwing good money after bad and actually front up to the fact that he's been fined and been convicted of wrongdoing by the Environment Waikato and get on and pay it. But of course, I don't think he's got the money to do it. So
that's the whole question. Yeah.
But he keeps talking of being able to mount a bid worth at least 200 million to buy back his dairy farms. But I think he's probably really chasing a rainbow.
Yeah. Do you think that too, Brian, or should we have more sympathy with him?
I don't think you should not prosecute someone who's broken the law because they haven't got the money to pay the fine. But you know, I think complying with the various rules and regulations are something that all farmers have got to do, and I don't think the crayfish should be exempt.
No. Okay. Now to the pig industry. There was a front-page story in the Dominion Post suggesting that pig farmers might try to avoid the auditing of their properties being released under the Official Information Act. This is not a very good look for an industry that's been under a lot of pressure over quite some time, hasn't it, Allan?
Yes, it's. I mean, whether you regard the furore last year over the sow crates as being a fair cop or not, the fact is that public opinion is very much in favour of or against sow crates, and therefore the pork industry has to front up to the fact that it needs to find a strategy for managing its way out of that particular system of rearing pigs.
Doesn't it need to clean up its act and show it's cleaned its act up, Brian?
Yeah, I think that what's going on at the moment, this inquiry that the organisation is doing is not complete yet. But the other thing, I'd just like the TV cameras to go back and have a look at some of these free-range pig farms in this very wet winter and see how the free-range pigs are getting on in comparison with the ones that are in barns that are temperature-controlled. I was watching TV the other night and there was an English program about going out into the country again, and they had some free-range pigs and they were up to their trotters in horrible mud and they were throwing the feed out onto this, and people were saying, this is good, free-range farming. There's another side to the story, and I think the great majority of pig farmers in New Zealand are doing a really good job, and they're copping the blame for a few mistakes that have been made. But overall, I think that the conventionally farmed pigs, if you like, are probably happier, especially in a winter like this one, than the so-called free-range pigs.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, an article in the Farmers Weekly talking about the UK and very high death rates amongst farmers there, a situation mirrored in New Zealand with ATV accidents. What more do we need to do about this, Allan? There's been education, there's been government regulation.
I'm not sure I'm probably the right person to talk about this because I've never practically farmed, and people who read my columns in Farmers Weekly would probably say it shows, but I think Brian would be much better to answer this
Brian,
question.
what do you think?
Well, I think this is one area where Federated Farmers have been trying really hard in cooperation with the ACC, and, you know, people especially come out, it's very easy because these ATVs are such magnificent machines, but you really do have to be careful. They're powerful, they're fast. You're sometimes using them on roads that are very wet and skiddy, and there's not much protection. It's an education thing, and I think people are trying, but it's just so easy to get blasé, and all of a sudden you're in an accident before you know what's happened.
Well, just quickly, political commentator Colin James, he was writing in the press. He says that cycle tracks, digging up beauty spots and more cows aren't going to close the gap with Australia. He says the answer is smart Auckland, locomotive to the whole economy. Do you think he's right, Brian?
Well, if you go back 20 or 30 years, we were going to be the financial centre of the South Pacific, weren't we, or of the world.
That didn't happen either.
That didn't quite happen.
Oh.
I think he can give some good examples of filmmaking and especially in the high-tech area where New Zealand has done pretty well. But by gee, don't discount that dairy cow, for example. Where would we be now without the dairy industry,
Absolutely.
which I think has performed absolutely magnificently.
But there was a speedboat last night, a $50 million speedboat, and two more on order. From a Hong Kong-based businessman, and that's really the one of the new industries to some extent
that farming should be watching out for.
Well, that certainly is helping.
After the break, we dish the praise and box the ears as we see fit. Now it's on to you beauty, praise or abolishing, the opposite. What do you have, Brian?
Well, I have something that's a bit sad, really, but it's praising. There's two farm leaders from the Thames Hauraki area who have died over the last few weeks. One, Basil Thorpe from Pyraw, was an absolutely meticulous farmer and a very measured and good farm leader, and we're sorry to lose him. And the other one, Viv Makareth from Whitianga, I think he is the only life member of the Meat and Fibre Division of Federated Farmers, life member. And Viv was a one-off. He was way ahead of his time. He was one of the original people that got into breeding animals for performance rather than for appearance, and he'll be really missed. Yes,
I well remember him getting up at meetings and stating his point of view, and he was very much objecting to quite a lot of the development that was taking place on the Coromandel, wasn't he, at various stages?
Yeah, and I think also you meat company guys would have heard a bit from Viv over the years.
Viv gave me at AFCO quite a bit of ear bashing back in the 90s,
yes. Yes, because he used to write for a variety of publications and get his views across that way. Brian, is it a real issue these days that we don't have the youngsters coming through who are going to take the place of people such as Basil and Viv, who they would have got involved as young people, spent 30 or 40 years in those sort of roles? Now there aren't the young people there.
I think there are some very good young people around. I mean, you look at that Young Farmer of the Year competition, and some of those people are getting involved. The other thing is farming is different. I mean, we were mostly family farmers as we grew up together, to say the Makareths and the Chamberlins, where the enterprises, as a generalisation, are much bigger now than they used to be. And it's a different scene in many respects. But, you know,
and more difficult to get off farm to go to meetings and take part in that sort of level of debate and discussion.
Yeah, one thing I miss is the debate. I mean, the farming forums of 20 and 30 years ago seem to be much more lively than they are now, but there's still a lot of professional work that goes into an industry that is somewhat different.
Yeah. OK, Allan, you've got a beauty as well, have you?
Yeah, I've just got a quick one. I just want to pay credit to the Meat Industry Association and Beef and Lamb New Zealand for their initiative in finally starting to get this meat sector strategy off the ground.
You think it's going to be successful in terms of what they're hoping to achieve?
I think it's going to be successful in terms of what they are hoping to achieve. I don't necessarily think it's going to be successful in what the farmer wants to achieve. The farmer wants a simple answer, and you can see it in Bruce Will's comments from Federated Farmers. They're champing at the bit to get involved. They've had plenty of chance to get involved for the last God knows how many years, but they haven't actually achieved anything. So I think the farmers farmers themselves are going to be unrealistic in their expectations, but hopefully there will be some things that will come out. I don't know where the quick wins are going to come from that Mike Peterson has talked about, but I do think some good things are going to come out from a proper analysis of the data that come out of the surveys that they will be doing with various both farm input, farm processing, farmers, and services to the industry.
What do you think, Brian? Do you think perhaps farmers are being a little optimistic, a little too optimistic about what might come out of, as Allan points out, another initiative, and we've seen plenty of them before?
We've certainly seen plenty of them, but I think the situation is probably more desperate now than it has been for a long time. I think it is. I agree with Allan. I think it's great to see all the participants getting together, and it is almost a case of sort of life and death. But as we said at the beginning of the program, I don't think we want to leave wool out of this equation either, because I think that's a necessary component to the rationalisation, the development's got to take place. And let's not forget, as far as access to Europe for our sheep meat is concerned, we've got the most wonderful opportunity and one of the greatest markets in the world to continue to capitalise on it.
So we should be making the most of it.
Absolutely.
Well, that's all we have time for this week. Thanks to my guests, former Federated Farmers President and Special Trade Ambassador Brian Chamberlin, and meat industry commentator Allan Barber. And thanks to you for watching. Please email your comments to country99tv.co.nz. Check out my blog there, and we'll see you next week.